Well, ladies and gentlemen, we have the official word. The government is expected to open sometime this week. You can see late last night, the United States Senate advances bill to reopen the federal government, and they got the 60 votes that were needed to bypass the filibuster. A few Democrats voted to reopen. They voted for the continuing resolution. And just from the look of it, because we knew based off of the shutdown, yesterday was day 40, or I think today is day 40, the longest shutdown we've seen. There was going to have to be compromise. The rubber was going to meet the road at a certain point. You've got flights being canceled. You have the Democrats saying there's all this pressure on the administration. And I do have to say, based off of the immediate reaction, it does seem like this is a Democrat cave. It's not like the Republicans gave the Democrats what they were looking for in terms of the temporary health care for migrants. And I mean, it's funny how they're proposing this new bill. It like adds $1 trillion to the deficit, yet the entire problem they had with Trump's big beautiful bill was the amount it was going to add because of the tax cuts that it was giving Americans. They said it's going to add 2 or 3 more $1 trillion to the debt every year, or I think that's over 10 years. And now suddenly they want to add another $1 trillion because they want all this other health care and everything like that. So, and they didn't get it apparently, and they're very angry. And there are a lot of Democrats that are saying this is because you would think there is at least some pressure on the administration. It's day 40. Yes, we understand what the filibuster the Republicans have proposed. I mean, if we're up to the Republicans, the continuing resolution would have went through. There would have been zero shutdown at all. But at a certain point, if Trump's approval rating is going down, and as we saw, you look on the Real Clear Politics composite, it is down. It's at a low since the beginning of his second term. And also you had the off-year elections, which I think people are taking too much stock into, but still the off-year elections were very positive, at least by margin's sake, and also in terms of the victories for the Democrats. You would say, well, the Democrats have the Republicans on their heels. They should dig in here and force the Republicans to compromise and force the Republicans to give in to what the Democrats want, or at least make it more even in terms of some type of negotiation back and forth. Well, it looks like that's really not what happened in terms of the actual continuing resolution, and the Democrats really not getting much of what they wanted in terms of the amount that will be spent on what they wanted, which was like temporary health care for migrants, emergency health care. And so you can see this, the House is coming back to Washington so they can reopen the government in a matter of days. Right now, Thursday, Friday is most likely. So they're still waiting. They're still waiting until the end of the week, but this is more of a like anecdotal thing. It's going to be opened. It's just when they get back, they're saying it's going to be reopened on November 13th, which would be the 43rd day of the shutdown. So that's basically it. And honestly, from a Democratic perspective, if they really gave in, and this is probably more so lobbying on an individual level, like if you're at 56, which I think is what they were at, you only need 4 more. So you attack maybe 4 of the moderates, behind closed doors, you talk to them, and at a certain point, it's like, all right, it's been 40 days, and they're probably thinking, well, this is becoming an issue, and it's reflecting on all of Congress, not just the Republicans. Even if Trump's approval rating maybe went down a point or two because of this, they cracked, and they said, all right, we'll it's not even, doesn't even look like it's a negotiating table. We will give in. And the Democrats can still try and, I guess, swing this as a victory because they can say, well, it was a 40-day shutdown and they did win the elections, and maybe that helped by a few points, the fact that the government was shut down in Virginia and New Jersey. I really don't think it had a huge impact on it, but they could maybe swing something like that. So either way, it is going to be reopened. I didn't think it was going to last 40 days. Normally these government shutdowns happen, I mean, the one in 2018 was a while. This one was a while. I do think there is a high incentive. You say, well, why were the 2 biggest ones under Trump? There's a high incentive to do anything, in opposite of Trump. And you see another thing with Chuck Schumer, who voted against it and was told everybody, I voted against this, because he knew he was going to get hate from all this, especially the younger Democrats who want Schumer gone. And that's just kind of where it is with Schumer. He has to go against basically everything that Trump does. And if he doesn't, even if he thinks Trump's right, he has to go against it because the Democrats will criticize him. And there's a huge appetite for just going against anything that Trump wants passed. And so I think that's one of the big reasons we've seen these 2 huge shutdowns. You can say it's also, well, Trump is aggressive and he doesn't want to really negotiate during his shutdowns. But especially in a situation like this where this the exact same continuing resolution was passed in the spring, but this one's not going to be passed. The Democrats just wanted some type of leverage. They utilized the filibuster to do it. And at least right now, another time passes, the Republicans threaten to eliminate the filibuster. And at this point, it's not needed, but I'm sure it's going to be something that comes up in the future, at least in the next year, and hopefully longer, as long as Republicans are able to keep the House and the Senate in 2027, 2028. You're going to be hearing more and more about eliminating the filibuster, as it is a big problem for Republicans right now, having control of the Senate and the House, yet needing the 60 votes if the filibuster is utilized. So we will see if they end up doing that. I know Trump wants to be really aggressive with it. Of course, it's a yin and a yang. If the Democrats take power, they win in 2028. They're going to have a lot more power without it, and they can kind of wield it in maybe even more of an obnoxious sense, because they can say, well, the Republicans were the ones that eliminated it, not us. And so they could kind of do that. But people say they're going to eliminate it anyways. I guess we'll have to see. I think Trump wants to be very aggressive, of course, and eliminate it. But that's just the update on that. And then you also do have this Donald Trump talking about that $2,000 payment. We're still trying to understand the structure of this in the exact bracket that it's for, or what you'd be eligible for, people would be eligible for. I think maybe under 100K is what I was hearing. Trump says all the money left over from the $2,000 payments, which will be made to low and middle incomes or U.S. citizens from the massive tariff income pouring into the country, will be used to substantially pay down the national debt. And so I'm not really seeing the math in terms of this with the numbers. If they are making, let's say it's $300 billion a year off of the tariffs, if you're going to give everyone $2,000, whether it's a tax refund or just a check, I mean, honestly, if Trump wants the most, the most positive thing in terms of the citizens giving him credit, it would be a check. Now, you could also do the tax refund, and I think that would still be good, but the check would be like, all right, people, this is from Trump. It's President Donald J. Trump giving you $2,000. But I don't like this, I'll be honest. I mean, they can do this, and that's fine, and they're trying to win the midterms and whatever. But you're just kicking the can down the road, and there's just no incentive to pay down the debt. Now, Trump says they're going to substantially pay down the debt. Well, I'm not even sure they're going to have enough money to cover $2,000 for everyone making under 100K. And then whatever is left over, listen, we have a $2 trillion debt a year. If we used all of the tariff revenue, which went from we were still making, I think it was $120 billion a year off tariff revenue as a result of the original 2018 tariffs. Yeah, now we're probably making 350 billion. It's an increase of 200 billion. But most of that money would have to go to the $2,000 checks for people making, whether it's under 100K, or I don't know if they're going to do it by tax bracket. I'm not sure how they're going to do it. And then you also have people saying, well, if you're more successful, you shouldn't be penalized. Well, this is not, this is obviously for Trump. It's a strategy with most middle-class people and lower-income people who are very upset with how much things cost, and they're blaming Trump now, and he's been in office for 10 months or whatever it is. And so this is a strategy by the administration in 2026, before the midterms, to try and alleviate some of the criticism that they faced when it comes to the cost of goods. And this will probably make things cost even more, but obviously it's going to alleviate a lot if you give people this type of money. That's just the way it works. So, and listen, this is the problem in terms of, I really wouldn't want to flirt with inflation again. Now, it's not going to be like the COVID with the 3 stimuluses and the money was printed. They're not adding new money into circulation. People have to understand, though, this is very important. I've heard people say, well, because this is different, they're not adding money into circulation. This is not inflation. It's just money reallocation. Well, if all of this money was used to pay down the national debt, or the vast majority was used to strategically pay down the national debt, versus giving people, just giving them $2,000 of disposable income, yeah, that is going to introduce inflation. To what degree? Probably a lesser degree, and liberals will exaggerate it and say it's going to be worse than it actually is. I'll agree with you there. But if you give all of these low-income people, middle-class people, $2,000, they're going to go out and buy stuff. They're going to drive up the price of things, and that's just the reality of it, and it will stimulate the economy. And we will probably see stocks doing very well, crypto doing very well, which is great, and we'd love to see it. But you will be dealing with some type of inflation, I would imagine. It's just hard to, because again, it's money that was just going to be used to pay down the debt. That's all it was going to be used for. And now that money is given to people to spend. And it's a lot of money. It's billions and billions of dollars. Hundreds of billions of dollars, I think, is the cost if you give, again, I don't know what the exact proposal is, but yes, there would likely be, maybe the inflation can be offset. The administration can offset the inflation that would be caused. And I'm not saying inflation is this horrible issue right now. It's really not. It's not completely ideal. Like the Fed wants it at 2.0%. It's at 3.1. Okay, it's not 100% ideal, but they're still cutting rates even with that because they know they're not going to get it down to 2.0 right now, especially with the stock market and where it is. Yeah, if the stock market curtailed down, we'd probably have lower inflation, but there's trade-offs. Remember, they started crying back in April? We had like 2.3, 2.2% inflation, but they're like, our 401ks are down. And now liberals are like, well, no one has 401ks. It's only the rich people. That's the thing with this. You're never going to win. There's always going to be criticism. There's always going to be an argument. Hopefully they've really figured this out and they know the level, if you introduce this money, and instead of, if you've got $350, $400 billion and Trump basically wants credit for generating that. And what he's saying is, I'm not going to get as much credit if all of that money is used to pay down the debt. So I'm going to give it to people and say, this is what I created for the United States. I created this money through the tariffs. And you also have the Supreme Court ruling, which we'll see what happens there. But, and I have heard, I've been told multiple times that the ruling itself is, it doesn't matter a ton because there are workarounds around it to where Trump can still implement the tariffs even if the Supreme Court rules it unconstitutional to unilaterally place the tariffs that Trump has placed on the countries. The only thing is, I think liberals would say, well, this is a Republican Supreme Court, and they're even admitting Trump is taking advantage and kind of overruling the, through the executive branch and utilizing his power in a nefarious way. So they would argue something like that. But I think it's anecdotal, even if it happens. You could say it's a bad look for the administration if the Republican Supreme Court does that. But from what I know, there are workarounds around that to where the tariffs can still be implemented, but it may take some time to keep the policy on through Congress. But look, we'll have to see. The point is the government's going to be open again, and it looks like the Democrats caved on pretty much everything. I mean, I'd like to see the final stuff in terms of like how much money they actually were asking versus how much they got. Apparently, it's like 5% or a very low percentage in terms of how much they got for some of these programs. And obviously, you could also say some of these liberal congressmen were disgruntled with the SNAP program and everything that happened with that. And Trump said, no, it's not going to be. You're trying to put the pressure on Democrats and force them to say, listen, the SNAP has been cut off. You need to reopen this. You're the ones holding it up. We have the continuing resolution. We got to 53 votes. You're the ones using the filibuster, forcing us to bring Democrats to the table and try and pass this. And they finally were able to do it, ideally with as limited concessions as possible. And it looks like that's the case. That's why there's all these Democrats going out saying crazy things, saying, criticizing the party and criticizing the people that voted for this, the Democrats that flipped. So that's just the update on this, guys. But that is going to do it for this video. Make sure you like the video down below. Also follow me on X. Link to that's always in the description.